Hi everyone, this is Jose Maldonado with ProcessMaker, and I want to take a few minutes to show you a quick look of an integration example between ProcessMaker and Automation Anywhere, which is one of the biggest players in RPA. And they can provide use cases that a lot of our customers are interested in, which is how can we leverage RPA bots, which are these execution pieces that automate human tasks, but they can do it quickly and more efficiently and scalably and so on. And how can we leverage those within a process maker workflow? So here I'm just at PB Bank, which is one of our sample banking pages. Let's say I'm just a visitor and I want to request a loan. So I would visit on the apply for the loan process. And this would basically prompt me to fill out a loan application form. Now it's pre-filled for this demo, but the idea is pretty straightforward. People would fill out an information that's submitted, and it would follow whatever flow you'd set up in ProcessMaker to do that. It's pretty simple. Now, let's say that the bank has now put in place a requirement that all applicants must be searched at the sanctions list, right? So the OFAC sanctions list, the Office of Foreign Assets Control from the U.S. Treasury, has a list of all individuals that are specially designated by whatever reason as risk individuals. And so banks should, of course, among other things, should not engage in business with them. And it's a pretty straightforward use case. If we would search for an individual here by name, it'll let us know not any results, right? Now, if instead we look for someone like Nicolas Maduro, which is Venezuela's president, then you'd see that there are different SDN or specially designated national programs, and they carry a weight, right? 100 risk score. So these are individuals, if they make this list, that you don't want to engage with. Now, from a manual process, it's pretty straightforward, right? Maybe a loan analyst or a loan manager would receive the application, and they would visit this page, take a few minutes, a few seconds, and figure out if the individual is in this list or not. But what if you're processing, 2,000 of these or 10,000 of these? That's what RPAs do wonderfully, because right now there's no really sort of API endpoints for the OFAC list to automate maybe a backend lookup into this, or at least not natively provided by this service. So there are third-party vendors out there who have sort of built an API layer on top of this, and they do their own lookup things and whatnot. But of course, that carries their own costs, etc. So Automation Anywhere and other RPAs are perfectly suited for these types of use cases, which from a human perspective is a very simple task, but it's just sort of cumbersome to automate and to make part of a larger automation workflow. So what would this look like in ProcessMaker or leveraging Automation Anywhere for that piece within a ProcessMaker workflow? So let me pivot here into our process modeler, and I put together this quick example. So let's take a look at it. Here's the applicant filling out that information. This is the start event, and it's a web entry event. So here we would see that website form that we just saw. That's kicking off the entire process. So once the applicant fills it out, it's going to feed into this Automation Anywhere lookup subprocess. Now, what's interesting is that here we're leveraging all those concepts of reusability, build and maintain once, use in multiple places kind of paradigms that if you're seeing some of our past webinars, you're already familiar with. But that's a very important tenet for ProcessMaker, which is, reuse and maintain independent asset libraries. So what this means is we're not punching in all the logic of connecting into Automation Anywhere and running that as part of this design. This is just a simple self-standing task, a sub-process task that, a loan analyst, if they want to decide, maybe I want this task to happen after some other task, they can very easily drag and drop. And I don't care what's going on inside of that. Just separating those different roles. But I will show you a quick peek of what that looks like. For now, once the lookup is the lookup job is executed, we'll get a response, and basically we're using that response to analyze and evaluate at a gateway, right? Basically, are you found in the OFAC or not? So if not, then in this example, we'll send an email notifying of the pre-approval. And if you are, then we're escalating to an analyst or a loan manager to take a second glance at it and say, hey, we found this guy at the OFAC list. So right off the bat, imagine if a loan manager is analyzing dozens of these requests a day. Now, instead of looking every single one of these individuals, now they're only looking at those who were immediately found in the list, and all who are not in the list, we can just send somewhere else. Now, in this example, of course, we don't need to pre-approval. In reality, I mean, we could certainly just route into different steps. But for this example, this is pretty straightforward. And of course, in reality, we don't necessarily need to escalate this to a human reviewer, sort of defeating the purpose of the automation in the first place. We could definitely just keep on adding a different task. Okay, let's figure out if something else can be done or whatever. But in this example, it's pretty straightforward. Perform the lookup. If I don't find you, send an email. If I do, display for an analyst to review. So what's interesting is that as a business analyst, someone who's deciding and defining what the loan approval looks like, what's the sequence of tasks, who needs to engage, I don't need to know anything additional in terms of what's actually going on with the Automation Anywhere lookup, all the technical nuts and bolts. I don't care about that. I just drag the sub-process into my design. I place it wherever it makes sense within the sequence of other tasks, and I'm done with it. Of course, if I am maintaining that integration, I am interested in what's going on. So let's take a look at the series of tasks that's happening inside these sort of sub-process task. It's also pretty straightforward, and this is something that would be maintained with someone who is responsible maybe for maintaining the integration or whatnot. So what we did is create a couple of data connectors, leveraging Automation Anywhere's REST endpoints, basically to authenticate. So this would get us a token with which we would then be able to execute a particular robot. So in Automation Anywhere, we have a robot that's doing exactly that manual process. Basically, open up a browser, punching in the name that was fed through the request, pressing the search button, and analyzing or parsing the results. Basically, we want to understand that little search box that happens here, if something comes or not. And if it does, we will send it back to ProcessMaker for further analysis. And that's basically, what's feeding this gateway in response. Other than that, all we're doing here is once we execute that robot, we have a wait event. So we're just sitting idly here for Automation Anywhere to send us a response. And once it does come, we then just basically map those response variables into the rest of the workflow so that we can evaluate them downstream, which is basically what's happening here. Now, what's interesting is as easy as it is to understand this workflow, keep in mind we don't really need to expose that, certainly not to a loan officer or a business analyst. This is just the level of abstraction that they're looking into. It's just this that we're seeing right here. So it's a great, as I've mentioned, it's one of those ideas of separating by context, by knowledge domain, and keeping it very low code and accessible to the roles that need to understand it. Right, and if we wanted, we could just keep on going down and understand, okay, but what is this actually looking like? And this is pretty straightforward, actually. Let me just show it to you real quick. So data connectors are a way to configure just your RESTful endpoints. So here we have our Automation Anywhere. These are the ones that we're leveraging in our design. And, for anyone who's familiar with RESTful services, you'll immediately realize that this is pretty straightforward. You just configure the headers, the body, some sample data if you want to test it, what's the method. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just a wizard. You go next, next, next. You fill out your information. So anyone who understands how to connect with REST services will find this immediately familiar. But if not, then to our point, you don't need to, right? Because this is all rolled up into a data connector. Once that's saved over there, you just drag this and drop into your designs, and you're good to go. And then you connect maybe all the different connectors, the wait events, you parse the variables, and you roll up this into another reusable asset, just like the one that we have here. So we're following this sort of path of abstraction to keep everything super simple to the appropriate roles that need to interact with these pieces of information. So if that makes sense, let's just run through a couple of examples. So let me switch here back to our web entry form. All we need is the name. That's what we're using to feed the Automation Anywhere job. So I'm just going to go and repeat that query with Peter Brown, who we know does not have any results. And then our process is going to perform that lookup. He's not going to find him at the OFAC list, and then we're going to get an email confirming that. So let's try it real quick. So I fill out some information. Now, of course, we have tons of content and webinars on just form design, how you can punch in all the information that you want to make this look as whatever you need. Right now, being pretty straightforward. So let's say I filled in. This is the loan that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. So right now, the process in ProcessMaker is kicking off, and it's sending that information to Automation Anywhere. I'm just going to wait here at Gmail because, we know that's not going to get a response. Okay, so note here that the job is kicked off. This is a window from the another machine where the Automation Anywhere job is actually running, and these are the steps as executed by the robot. So there's no human intervention, but it's just going through those steps as a human would. So it's opening up a browser, it opened the OFAC, it punched in the value automatically, and these are just the updates that it did not find anything. So now he's rendering that into a response object and hitting the callback URL back to send it to ProcessMaker, and the process is done. So now at this end, we can see that in our Gmail account, we got the notification. Now that notification is a result of the evaluation gateway recognizing that there was no hit on the OFAC list. All right, so now let's repeat that. But this time, let's try it of course, with someone that we know is in the sanctions list. So first, let me just do it manually. Let's confirm someone that we know is in here. So let's try one of Maduro's lieutenants, Rafael Saria. Let's search for him real quick. So yeah, right off the bat, we can see that there are several hits on the results list, all on Venezuela's specially designated national list, and risk score of 100. Now this is me doing manually, but now let's see what the automation would look like. So let's revisit this. And now I'm going to repeat this as Rafael. So let me just punch in Rafael Saria. And I'm just going to go be quick about the rest. Let's say we have filled everything in place. Okay. So once we're done, let's submit that, right? And thank you. Okay, so Rafael is waiting. Now I'm just going to pivot here into the portal for an analyst. So this is me going through my day. I'm a loan analyst, loan manager at PB Bank. This is ProcessMaker's portal specifically for this role. I have access to my documents, to my messages, all that's going on. But keep an eye here on my notification bell while we see on this other window what's happening behind behind our backs in Automation Anywhere. We're going about our business, maybe reviewing some of these processes that we've checked out in the past. And, we've got access to our loans, our accounts, and there it went. If you realized, our notification bell just updated. So this is a response that a task was assigned to us, and this is a result from that automation piece. So instead of firing that email that we just got, we got a notification for an analyst review, which is the next task. So let's click on that and see what this is all about. And in this example here, you can see that, we're presenting within a ProcessMaker form all the information from the list. And it says, hey, the name was found, risk score 100, here are the details. This is the name, the sanctions list, the program. So all the information that was fed as a response by Automation Anywhere. And of course, this is a ProcessMaker form, so we could just capture a result right here. We can go ahead and reject it straight away. Maybe you want to submit it for additional review, approve it anyway. And all of these are just basically action buttons that could trigger different paths in our process model and just streamline what we want to happen. So in a quick example, we have a very simple process That's already lifting a lot of weight from the analyst, because now they only have to take a look on those applicants that actually have positive results on the OFAC list. This has been a very quick example of how we're leveraging that job in automation anywhere within ProcessMaker. So thanks, everyone. It's been great, and just feel free to reach out if you have further questions.